Happy Sabbath, Kurumi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. You there? I'm not at your phone right now, but in any case, welcome. I think Michael was on as well, but I don't know where he's gone. But nevertheless, welcome to Friday night Bible study. It's presented by my ministry, Spiritually Enlightened, as well as Seventh Day Adventist Church. I'm actually the youth leader at the moment. So thank you for joining, and feel free to invite anyone that you feel you may want to attend the study for today. I think I've never actually seen you in the study before, so we're currently going through a series called the Hall of Faith, and the idea of the series is to analyze the different individuals that are mentioned in the latter part of Hebrews 11, because each one of those individuals had kind of a walk or experience with God, and that allowed them to develop the faith that they have, of which we actually sometimes rely upon whenever we're feeling down in terms of our faith. So,
sorry, I'm cycling, so I was just listening. But yeah, happy Sabbath. Okay. I'm not actually a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm a Hebrew Israelite, but I was interested in the Bible study that you were gonna start off. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Praise God. Praise God.
So I'm just listening. Okay.
Okay. All right. No problem. No problem. Without any further ado, let's just get straight into it. So let me just open our presentation, and we'll just go straight into the study for today. So the study for today is on Rahab and Gideon. We've been doing a study, I believe, since January or so, but prior to that, we did the Grace of God series. But now we're going through two people that you're probably might be familiar with one of them more than the other, but it should just be a good experience to be able to share. So let me share our screen. All right. So as I said to you before, today's study is on Rahab and Gideon, but before we even study anything, let's just have a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, I'd like to thank you, Lord, for just blessing us with the opportunity to gather once again, Lord. You said in your word, where 2 or 3 people are gathered, you're there within the midst of them, Lord. And, even though we're a smaller number, I'm asking that you just be with us, even as we study your scriptures, really understand how they'll be able to connect us to you on a greater level life that we're living in. Be with us who are on this platform, be with anybody else at some point in time. I ask you just be with me even as I lead the study, that you hide me behind your cross, and that you'll speak a powerful word through me to be able to not just to convict Umi, but also to convict my the wonderful truths found in Jesus' name I prayed all these things. Amen. All right, so the 2 script readings that this is really based on is Hebrews chapter 11, verse 31, and Hebrews chapter 11, verse 32, 34. I'm just going to read Hebrews 11, verse 31. So in Hebrews 11, verse 31, it says, by faith, the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies of peace. And then finally, verse 32 and 34, we're not going to go into all these at the moment, but that's where the is mentioned. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, also of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. So the first person we're going to look at out of 2 individuals is Rahab. Obviously, she's mentioned narrative first, and just in general, he comes prior to Gideon. The name Rahab, in the Bible is probably one that's very familiar. For some people may not be familiar with them. I did a bit of research into the name, and I'm somebody that I like to do a bit of etymology. Etymology is literally just a study of words. But as when you do this practice, it helps you to really understand exactly where the writer or whoever is creating the narrative is trying to come from. So one of the things I usually do, especially whenever I'm studying the Bible, whenever I'm looking at an individual, I kind of like to find out who the individual is. And the best way to find out the individual is to find out the meaning of their name. For example, my name is Kings Meadow, deceiver. And through you seeing that, that's where you can kind of get how to know who that person is in terms of their character. But when I looked at Rahab, I was a bit confused and I was a bit shocked by what I saw. So the name Rahab literally means blusterer. And a blusterer is just a fancy term that just means a person who causes trouble by speaking indiscreetly, i.e. someone that's loud mouth. And obviously I wouldn't have thought that of Rahab, especially when I think of the story that's mentioned in relation to her hiding the spies in Canaan. So there's a couple of passages of scripture that want us to just kind of just focus on, and I'm just going to turn to them. So the first is found in Joshua 2, verse 1 to 14. Then the next is Joshua 6, 23 to 25. And then finally, James 2, verse 25 to 26. I'm going to read James 2, verse 14. So it says, now Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out 2 men from Achaia Grove to spy secretly, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and came to the house of a harlot named Rahab and lodged there. It was told the king of Jericho, saying, behold, men have come here tonight from the children of Israel to search out the country. So the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all the country. And the woman took the 2 men and hid them. So she said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And it happened as the gate was being shut, when it was dark, that the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. See them quickly, for you may overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them with stalks of flax, which she had laid in order on the road. On the roof. And the men pursued them by the road to the Jordan, to the fords. And as soon as those who pursued them had gone out, they shut the gates. Now before they lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, that the terror of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea, when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites, who were on the other side of the Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. As soon as we heard these things, our hearts melted. Neither did there remain any more courage in anyone because of you. The Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. Now, therefore, I beg you, swear to me by the Lord, since I have shown you kindness, that you will also show kindness to my father's house, and give me a true token, and spare my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, and all that they have, and deliver us lives from the death. Sorry. The men answered her, our lives for yours. If none of you shall tell this business of ours, and it shall be when the Lord has given us a land, we will deal kindly and truly with you. So the reason, obviously, I decided to read the whole passage of Joshua chapter 2, verse 1 to 4, welcome Christopher, by the way, was because of the fact that when you kind of looking at particular stories like this, you need to actually really look at it and be able to understand it. So just to set the scene, Moses was the person that led the Israelites out of Egypt, and he was the individual that I guess you could say pioneered the way for the Israelites to be able to have this I guess you could say respect that was owed to them by the nation. And Moses' successor was Joshua. And obviously, I can imagine because he was more or less underneath Moses' tutelage, he'd received a lot of training and he understood how to go about all these different things. And this is essentially a story where there were spies that were sent out to give a report of the land, and they were to basically assess the land and see, if it's really possible for them to, take the land in the way that they envisioned. However, when they obviously went into the land, they got themselves into a bit of a pickle because, they weren't really able to get out without causing any trouble. In any case, they decided to lodge in a place where this prostitute called Rahab was actually found. And even though they were lodged in this actual place, what happened was, the prostitute Rahab was essentially presented with a choice. Either expose the whereabouts of these individuals who are more or less intruders in this land because they're foreigners, they have no business in this land, or could actually, decide to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to spare you guys. I don't want any harm to come to you guys. Or as we just read from this passage, they actually chose the latter. I think what's so important is the reasoning why she actually decided to choose the latter. Because when you actually look at it and decipher the actual text, we see the fact that when she actually started to give reasons as to why, she decided to provide them shelter, it was because of the fact that they served the God who had done all these different things. And I think that's quite powerful because it kind of shows a testament. It's kind of a testament to show, the goodness and grace of God. And if you really actually analyze the whole story of the Israelites, one thing you realize is that, even though, in the Old Testament, it seems like God is just literally just inspiring the Israelites to just go to all these different nations. That's not what he actually envisioned. In fact, he never actually wanted to take out any of these nations for any military rule. What had happened was because of the fact that the Israelites were really frustrated with the process that God was trying to take them through, it got them to a point where they essentially said, no, you know what, we want to take things by these. They decided to say, we want a king, even though the king was God themselves. Going back to this particular narrative, what we see is the fact that Rahab has shown a tremendous amount of faith because of the fact that she told them that, I'm going to protect you because of the fact that your God has done all these different things. They could have just rightly so just kill her. But the beauty of it is that she trusted in God, even though she hadn't had a relationship with God as yet. She trusted in the reports that was given of God from, the many different things she'd heard. And that was what inspired her to actually act in a way that would actually help them and guide them. And when we read Joshua chapter 6, verse 23 to 25, we'll see that. Before we even get to that, another thing that I should really point out is the fact that, if you look at the genealogy of Jesus Christ, I believe is mentioned in Matthew chapter 1, we see there's many different names mentioned. And what I love about the genealogy of Jesus Christ is that you would think to yourself, because Jesus is the Son of God, rightly so, his lineage should consist of kings, I don't know, of rulers, of all of these different great people in society. When you actually really analyze and look at the actual genealogy of Jesus Christ, we see the fact there are a couple of names that come up that you wouldn't really think should really belong there. So even before we go to Joshua 6, 23 to 25, just going to quickly turn to Matthew chapter 1, read what it says. And afterwards, we'll go back to 6, 23 to 25. Does anyone have anything to add before I move on, by any chance? If you don't feel like speaking, you can just type in the chat. But if not, we can just move on. If you have nothing to say, let me just move on. Okay, so I'm reading of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, which is found in Matthew chapter 1, verse it's from verse 1, but I'm going to read a specific part just to be able to kind of help you to really understand what exactly I'm alluding to here. So I'm just going to read it in your hearing. So I'll read verse 1 so we have a bit of context. So it says, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, and obviously it goes on to say the son of Abraham. And then after this, it starts to list all the different people that are essentially part of the family of Abraham. So, it goes into Isaac, Jacob, and etc. And then when we go all the way down to about verse 5, I believe it is, you see it says Salmon begot Boaz, and then Boaz by Rahab. And obviously, we've literally just studied in the passage and we realized that Rahab is an individual that probably really shouldn't be there. But what I find so interesting is the fact that Jesus actually included, Rahab in his genealogy. And the reason for that is because of the faith that, she portrayed. If we look at Joshua chapter 6 now, verse 23 to 25, it says the following. It says this. So it says, and the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab, her father, her mother, her brothers, and all that she had. So they brought out all her relatives and left them outside the camp of Israel. But they burned the city and all that was in it with fire. Only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasure of the house of the Lord. And Joshua spared Rahab the harlot, her father's household, and all that she had. So she dwells in Israel to this day because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy at Jericho. And what I find so powerful about this particular passage, when you actually join it up and line it up with Joshua chapter 2, is the fact that it clearly shows us that, there was a promise made to Rahab that, as long as, nothing bad happens to us, as long as we're able to get out of the situation, we're going to make sure your family's spared. And then right here, we see in Joshua 6, verse 22 to 25, a kind of fulfillment of the fact that they said, yeah, we're going to actually give you safety. We're going to make sure that you're all well and good. I love the fact that at the end of verse 25, it actually says that, they've literally dwelt, in her descendants actually dwelt in the land at that time up until this very day. And what I find so interesting about that is the fact that it shows us that, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so exactly. She was rewarded for her righteousness. And I think what you just mentioned there is so key because righteousness is not something that you can earn. It's not something that you can, it's not like, for example, when you study for an examination and then what have you. It's not something that, you're even entitled to. It's something that you have to, basically get on account of your faith in Jesus Christ. And this narrative of Rahab literally just shows us that the faith that she had was one in which allowed her to be able to have, to essentially be made righteous, but not just made righteous, actually made justified. And if I just quickly read James chapter 2, 25 to 26, you're going to see exactly what. So in James 2, verse 25 to 26, it says the following. It says this. Likewise, was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works when she received the messages and sent them out another way? But as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. So this is just a portion of James that's essentially entitled Faith Without Works is Dead. And it's literally breaking down systematically the fact that, you can't claim to, believe in Jesus Christ and not decide to actually live in a certain way. But what I find so beautiful about this narrative is the fact that the last person that it decides to use to really explain it properly is it uses Rahab. And it uses this term of being justified. And all this term justified just means it's just being made right, as in essentially being made righteous, being made perfect. And what is so interesting about this is the fact that, yes, of course, faith was an element which actually allowed Rahab to practice these works, but it was ultimately works that actually said, what, she was actually able to, have not just herself be saved, but her entire family be saved. And it can kind of be compared to the situation with Noah and his family. The fact that, I can imagine, Noah's, been spoken to by God and Noah's been spoken to by God. It was in that capacity, that's where, he was able to essentially, preach for 120 years. And unfortunately, only him and his family were saved. Some of the animals at that time. What we find so interesting is the fact that it was their faith that was essentially rewarded. And as a result of their faith being rewarded, it's now actually an example for us to realize that, yeah, you know what, if you are actually faithful to God, if you decide to say, you know what, I'm going to serve him above anybody else, that you will actually be rewarded for your faith. So I see another chat in the comment. Yeah, so exactly. Yeah, so she was aware of the power of the Most High and feared what would have been done to her if she hadn't helped him have his plan. Yes, I do agree with that, but at the same time, I don't feel like she did it completely out of fear. I feel like she did it also. I know, obviously, when you look at the text, it looks like it's just done out of fear, but I believe that it was also a case where she believed that the God that they served was the true God. Because she knew that he was the true God, that was her reasoning to say, you know what, even though, he's been able to deliver them for all these different things, it was also a case where, he's irrefutably the God that needs to be worshipped. The beautiful thing is that even though the Israelites were quite vast in number, despite the fact of them being so vast in number, they weren't really, I wouldn't say they were like militarily trained to be able to take out all these people. If it wasn't for the fact that God was on their side, they would have had no business, because at the end of the day, prior to them even coming out of this situation, they were, slaves in Egypt. And if we go just a bit...
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, so I was saying that what I find so interesting and what I find so great about the story is the fact that even when you look at... I've even lost my train of thought. What I was essentially saying was that Joshua... Oh, I've Yeah, I completely lost my train of. I'm probably gonna have to try to remember later, but I've completely lost my train of thought.
But you were saying something about the Israelites not being favored or something like that. Sorry, I might have misheard it, but
Oh no,
yeah,
you're correct. Yeah. So what I was trying to say is that there wasn't anything particularly special about the Israelites or as to why God picked them. It was just a case where, they happened to be, the descendants of Abraham. But what I find so interesting about God is the fact that God wasn't using the Israelites to say, you know what, it's only them that's going to be able to receive it. He was actually kind of, I wouldn't say use them as a means to them, that would be a bit of a harsh term to use. I would say he was using them as an evangelistic opportunity to witness to other people. And I remember what I was trying to say now. What I was essentially saying.
Sorry. Sorry. I was going to say I didn't disagree. I don't agree with that, but
okay.
Carry on.
How do you think that?
Because if you look in Deuteronomy, it talks about them being a special people.
Yeah.
So the Israelites essentially were promised certain things, and because they didn't obey the commandments of the Most High, they were put into captivity. So after their captivity was done, the Most High resumed his goal with them. Because if you look into Jeremiah 10, it talks about, no, not Jeremiah 10, Jeremiah 31 talks about their whole, the whole plan of the Most High in the beginning. And also Christ came for the lost sheep of Israel. So, sorry, I'm out of breath because I was cycling. But yeah, so with that point of what you said, I didn't agree, but the rest of it, yeah, definitely.
Okay, I can understand that. But when I was saying that, what I was essentially saying is that, yes, they obviously were special select people that God selected out. What I was alluding to was the fact that they, when Jesus came the second time, because of the fact that they felt this somewhat privilege, they completely lost sight of the reason as to why God actually decided to come to them in the first place. Because
okay. Sorry, yeah.
So when you look at the story of Rahab, even though it looks like, she's saying, oh, because of the fact that God has been able to do all this different stuff, you know what? I mean, if I don't help you guys, it kind of looks like, well, at the same time, it's more a case where your God has done all of this. Your God is the one that, allowed you guys to walk through the Red Sea. Your God has done all these different things. And that was essentially what God was always trying to do. But the problem is that the Israelites ended up just getting to a point where, it's either them having a lack of faith in God, or it would be a case where they were literally saying, oh, you know what, God is going to do this, God is going to do that. And that's the reason why you see, I guess you could say many times in scripture where, because of the fact that they've had one victory, they automatically, every single time they're going to go into battle, it's going to be victory. But really, really analyze the story, you see that one of the reasons why they may not have actually got the victories didn't actually trust or believe in God, or didn't even follow his express command, which kind of links back to what you said. God promised them so much.
Yeah, no, definitely, because
they didn't really live up to the promises.
They didn't live up to what? The promises.
Essentially, they didn't live up to the promises God gave them.
Okay, yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, true. I agree. Sorry, I should have let you finish your point.
Right.
I got a bit defensive. But yeah.
But I think one thing that's most startling about Rahab is the fact that, she's a prostitute. And, it doesn't matter what era of time that you look at, a prostitute never really be looked at in a good sense. But you have to kind of just imagine you put yourself in a room in which literally hiding the people in. A prostitute, one, obviously doesn't really, I mean, as far as I'm aware, they don't really usually believe in God. And then also it's a case where they're kind of seen as a bit low in terms of society. So for that reason, one could imagine that maybe it's a case where they don't really have much to gain from, what do you call it? I guess what I'm trying to say is that, they don't really have a way of really being able to actually gain anything from this experience. So they thought, why should I really help these people? And what I find even more startling about the account is, one, obviously the fact that, she's been accepted into the genealogy of Jesus Christ. But the second thing is the fact that, God, when he came to this earth, he looked for, he didn't, even if you look throughout the whole Bible, especially when Jesus was here, most of the time he didn't spend in church. He spent it with people that were literally, either in poverty or bad situations. Like, even, if you look at the different parables, many a times you see the fact that, even in one distinctive parable, I can't remember the exact place, one distinctive parable literally says that he was actually speaking to the servant, and, he invited made this big banquet. And in this big banquet that he made, people that he was expecting to come, church, they never came. And he said, you know what? No, this banquet still needs to take place. He says to the servant, go out, go and get the poor people, go get all these different people, go into the highways and the byways. And even when the servant said the places, he said, no, keep bringing more and more people, because at the end of the day, the gospel wasn't made just to benefit, what do you call it? Without, I guess you could say, rich prosperity. It was made for all, and that's obviously why you see in Matthew 24 that the gospel shall preach to all the world and to a witness, and then the end shall come. And recently, I've been reading this book called Heavenly, the Heavenly Trio. And one thing that was so beautiful about one thing that was so interesting that the trade is the fact that when Jesus came to this earth, he literally flipped everything upside down. Even the understanding of kings and monarchy and everything, he flipped it all upside down, because God that we serve isn't one that's really concerned too much about position. Of course, he has the grandest position of them all, but the God that we serve literally has his, I guess you could say, his euphoria moments as a result of him actually expressing love unto mankind. And that love is literally ultimately down to serving. If you look at the Jesus was, introducing communion service to everyone, and he was saying to, Peter, oh, you need to, eat. And Peter just looks at him like, no. He said to Peter that, he says to, what do you call it? He said he's going to wash people's feet. And Peter just looked at him like, why on earth would I even allow you to wash my feet? You're Jesus Christ, you're Son of God. And then obviously the next thing he says to him is kind of a rebuke. He says to him, oh, you know what, if you decide to not let me wash your feet, you can't have any part of me. And it's so interesting because it just goes to show not just, just the Jews at that time, but even us in this day's society, many a time, when we think of, God and of Jesus and everything, I can imagine, even if we were in that day and age, we'll probably think to ourselves, he's going to come and splendor and everything. What's so crazy is that everything that he did was literally just opposite of what we imagine, to the point that I can imagine that was probably the reasons why the Pharisees decided to take him out. Well, this guy, he's just undoing all the work that we've done. This doesn't make any sense. And the thing is, people are, being won over, and it just doesn't make any sense. But if we go a bit further into Rahab, what we realize is the fact that, as we've seen from these three different passages of scripture, is the fact that Rahab is an individual. She was just ultimately blessed from this one deed she decided to do. And this deed was literally just based off of the fact that he just had the faith to know that God was going to deliver at this time. I think that's so powerful because, many times you look at the situations in your life and, maybe you may not, might not know the most about, maybe you might not, have, the best or anything like that. But what's so beautiful is that the faith that you have in God will literally open doors for you that were not previously opened. And faith is literally, as you could say, an activating agent that allows you to actually really experience the divine power of God in a beautiful way. I'm just going to quickly just read, actually, before I move on, do you guys have anything else to add on, by any chance?
No, I definitely agree with what you're saying. Yes, especially that part in James where it talks about, your faith without works is dead. So it's like, it's not enough just believing. You have to actually act and, perform the works that Christ taught us to perform in glory of the Most High. Innit? So, yeah. And then, doing your works and not believing is also a bad thing too. So you have to have both in hand.
Yep, I wholeheartedly agree with that. So let's just quickly move on to the next person. So next person, I could say maybe this person might be a bit more familiar with everyone. I don't know. I just get that feeling sometimes. But the story of Gideon, as I said, it's probably a bit more better understood than the story of Rahab. And I guess you could say it kind of resonates with us a bit greater. And just like, with Rahab, generally speaking, what I usually do is find out the meaning of the person's in. I can kind of get, a better picture of who the person is. So when I looked at the name Gideon, I saw it literally means one who cuts down. And, I'm pretty sure, all of us know the story of Gideon, but, it's quite an intriguing one, and we're actually going to see exactly how that is as we go through the study. We're just going to read Judges chapter 6, verse 11 to 12. We won't read other passages longer. We'll read Judges chapter 6, 11 to 12. And does anyone mind turning to that text and reading it for me? So it's Judges chapter 6, verses 11 to 12, if anyone has it. Anyone's found it, you can just go ahead and read it. Has anyone found the text yet? Judges 6, 11, verse 12.
I'll read it.
Sorry,
It says from verse 11, now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth tree, which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress in order to hide it from the Midianites. Verse 12, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him, and he said, the Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor.
Right, amen. Thank you very much. So just to kind of put things into context, so the book of Judges has about has around 20 chapters, it has 21 chapters. And the main purpose of each of these judges was to help the Israelites during a time that they were really struggling with their faith. And obviously after the judges, of course, came the kings. And what we realized is that after each judges finished their work, Israelites just automatically just return back to what they were before. So it's a bit of a disheartening thing. But what we find so interesting about Gideon is that Gideon is a different kind of judge. You know, when you look at, like, for example, like Samson or the other judges that I mentioned in the Bible, it's kind of a case where they just automatically just rise to the occasion. But, you know, what's interesting about Gideon is the fact that one with that the angel of the Lord, who, you know, in this text is just referring to who Jesus Christ was before he came to earth. Gideon is kind of just offering multiple excuses. Obviously, we didn't read that, but you know, what I really like about this passage is the fact that, you know, God has come to him, he's spoken to him. Very similar to the story of Moses, you know, when Moses, was just, in the field, and then God spoke to him through the book. And what we see here is the fact that, you know, God has, established what he wants. And, you know, he said, well, you're going to deal with the Midianites. And, you know, even though, you're going to deal with the Midianites, and he calls him a mighty man of valor. And what I find so interesting about this is a case where when you're in a particular situation, or when you are in a, I guess, a particular season, God will come to you and will literally say specific things to you to help you to rise out of the situation. And what I find so interesting about Gideon is the fact that when you really look and study the story of Gideon, you know, he's just like Moses, he's offering multiple excuses. You know, when Moses was approached by God, what did he say to Moses? What did he say to God? He said, you know, God, I can't speak. He himself knew he was lying. Of course he could speak. He was raised in Pharaoh's palace. In fact, he could probably speak more eloquently than his father-in-law. And it's the very same case, you know, with Gideon. You know, Gideon says, oh, you know, my clan is the smallest. I mean, what do you expect me to do to be able to help this situation? There's nothing that I can do. But, you know, it goes back to that text, I believe it's found in 1 Samuel 16. It says, you know, God doesn't look on the outward appearance. God looks on the inside. God looks at the heart. And when God looks at the heart, he doesn't do it because of the fact that, you know, some people's hearts are tainted or not. He does it because he can see your purest intentions. Because I believe it says in Proverbs that, you know, out of the heart, all of the issues of life flow. When we really look at the whole of Judges chapter 6, from verse 11 all the way down to the end of the passage, we won't read for the sake of time. We see the fact that, you know, Gideon is kind of, I guess you could say, testing God and asking him, okay, you know, do this for me. Okay, all right, okay, you've done that. Why don't you do this for me as well, God? And it's almost like Gideon just giving God some incessant tests. It's like we're deciding to go to the doctor and we know we have an illness, And we're saying to the doctor, okay, you know what, cure me of my illness. But before you can cure me of my illness, I need you to do all these different tests. And then even after all of the tests have come back to say that you don't have an illness, we're still saying to the doctor, can you do this test for me? And I guess it really shows the patience of God with the fact that he was willing to actually listen to in all of this. But I think what's interesting is the fact that usually when you look at when you test God, sometimes most people, when you look at the term testing God, you think of you shouldn't really test God. But I feel like when I look at this passage, Gideon isn't testing God for the sake of it, in the sense that he's just trying to I guess you could say aggravate God or just God. Like he's doing it because he wants to really see if this is really God that's actually speaking to him at that time. And I don't really know much else about the story of Gideon to be able to what do you call it? Maybe it's a case where he'd had a bad experience and that's the reason why he feels like this. I feel like we ourselves are actually sometimes the same. And for us, even sometimes it's a case where we've already had evidence that God has actually delivered us from a situation. Still, we decide to say, oh, you know what? We will actually, decide to work to a greater capacity to actually ask God, okay, you know what? I really want to be able to actually learn more and more. And what I've realized, especially with the story of Gideon, just as with the story of Rahab, is the fact that they're both individuals that are, very much considered as, I guess you could say, not very high up in society. And God decided to use them in such a way. And even the manner in which the Bible actually mentions the numbers of the Midianites, it mentions them as local. There's so many of them. But what's even more powerful about the story of Gideon is the way that God really actually manifests himself throughout the story. Because when you look at the story, we see the fact that originally Gideon has a very high number of people with him, but essentially it gets to the point where those people don't really, God literally has to say, you know what, don't come to this, this battle, don't be a part of this if you're not really prepared to go all the way. And I think the same thing applies to us sometimes, because many a time we have to realize that being a Christian isn't just necessarily going to be a nice ride. Have its ups and downs. It's going to have have its humps that are probably that your car can't be able to bear them. And you go through all these experiences, of course, they make you better, they refine your character. You have to realize that, as a result of you deciding to be a Christian, trials will definitely come your way. Temptations will come your way, but from James, temptations don't come from God. They obviously come from the devil. But even though, temptations and all these things will come your way, God will still be able to provide a way for you to be able to get out of that temptation. So when we really look at the stories of Gideon and also of Rahab, we see the fact that, in both of these stories, they are individuals that have literally decided to fully and wholly lean on God in terms of their understanding and in terms of their experience of being able to actually be used by God in a way. And even when I think about a normal life of a young person, many a times, when you're a young person, you maybe going about your doing all these different things. And what you sometimes realize is the fact that, maybe get where you think, you know what, maybe I really need to understand God for myself, learn God for myself. When you have that defining experience, just like, Rahab had that defining experience where she actually, said, oh, you know what, I'm going to protect the spies. Or Gideon had that defining experience, said that, he's going to stand for God, even though, the numbers that are with him are much less than the numbers that are against him. And what's so interesting about God is the fact that when you've had those experiences, it's almost a case where that particular experience you've had is enough to literally sustain you through any period. Does anyone have anything else to add before I move on? No one has anything else to add? All right, I'll move on then if no one else has anything else to add. So let's just summarize everything all together. So obviously, both of these individuals are found in the Hall of Faith. And one thing that's so interesting about the Hall of Faith that, both me and, all of the presenters that have actually spoken said is that every single one of these individuals that I mentioned are individuals who are essentially, they're just normal people. It's not a case where there's anything about them. They're not a monarch or have, of course, you have you have prophets and etc. But irrespective of that, it's a case where God is just like you. And I think the biggest takeaway, especially from the stories of Gideon and Rahab, is the fact that God can meet you anywhere. And when God decides to meet you, it's your imperative or it's your decision to essentially say, you know what, God, I will go wherever you want me to go. It kind of really reminds me of the story of the disciples. I believe the series called The Chosen, and it kind of goes through the like people, and it was talking about the fact that when Peter was actually approached by Jesus, it was a case where he actually had a debt looming upon his, because his trades was his trade was that he was a fisherman, but he had a bit of a gambling problem, and because he had this gambling problem, it essentially allowed him to accumulate so much debt that he was um, basically in a high amount of debt to the Roman government. Like, as we all know, we know that the Israelites were not the Romans in a nice situation. Essentially, the slaves of the Romans. Be in debt to the Roman government is probably because death the result of paying back the debt. And if you really put yourself in Peter's shoes, these are waters always decided to case where he's not a skilled fisherman. He's thrown his net into the pool and he's still can't find anything. Imagine he's probably been doing this for hours, and at this point he's tired. But because his debt is so bad, he thought to himself, you know what? There's no way I'm going home until I get what I need. And this random man comes along and says, "Put your net." And you and I, just like Peter, will probably be like, "Who are you? This is my trade." It's like, what do you call it? Me being an accountant. I've struggled to try to balance the books all this time, and this random individual just comes along and says, "Have you looked at that figure over there?" And I look at him like, "Do you think I've been doing all this time? Do you think I've just been, I've just been writing down things for no reason? Do you think I've just been, just been looking at things from different angles for no reason?" What I find so interesting about Peter is the fact that, irrespective of the fact that he doesn't actually know who Jesus is at the time. Of course, he knows of the prophecies of him, but he doesn't know who he is at this right precise moment at this time. He decides to, show a level of faith and essentially show a level of faith that he was actually rewarded for. When he put down his net and believed in the fact that he could put down a net, we all know the story. Had so much fish that it ended up breaking it. And another story that we know of, when Peter's had to walk. The only reason why he fell in the water is because he took his eyes off of Jesus. And what we have to realize is that the moment we take our eyes off of Jesus, that's when we lose our whole purpose, our whole vision in life. Same thing goes with Gideon and Rahab. They always made sure that they kept their eyes focused on Jesus. And we need to do the same thing. And faith is one of those things where there's no way you'll be able to get so much faith to go through any situation. Faith is literally developed trials. And through those trials, we'll be able to get more and more faith and essentially have a more and more character. That's more or less the very brief study I have for you today. I don't know if there's anything else to add. Then we can just go. No one else had anything else to add. We can just go into a word of prayer and then we'll just close the study. Heavenly Father, I'd like to thank you, Lord, for just blessing us with the opportunity to gather together on this platform. Lord, the passages that we've gone through are quite profound. We've looked at the story of Gideon and Rahab in a very particular way, Lord. We've seen that these two individuals, there was nothing, great about them. They were just generic individuals in society. You decided to speak life into them. You spoke life into life of Rahab. We know it was a, and even though Rahab was, considered so low, and decided to go one step further and include her in your very genealogy. And even when we look at the story of Gideon, we know that Gideon initially had so many men were on his side. But it got to a point where when he was actually ready to go against the Midianites who were as local, he barely had any men to be able to even try to put on high. We realize that sometimes God, you put us at a disadvantage because, as you said in your word, strength is made perfect in our weakness. I'm asking that, Lord, even as we go into the Sabbath, Lord, even as going to be celebrating communion, Lord, for the first time in a couple of years, help us, Lord, to really remember the sacrifice that you made for us. And remember that the fact that it's only by your grace and only by the faith that you've been able to exhibit by dying for us and living a life, that we will be able to actually be reclaimed back to you, Lord. Continue to be with us and abide with us in order that we ask that you would give anybody else that may have joined study or may have come off, and that you would pause for any sins and trespasses may have committed against. Please may I pray of these things. Amen.
Amen.
Studies on next week as well. He accidentally the flyer for she actually sent the narrative for the flyer for next week. Next week, I have a speaker from America. He's a pastor from America I've known for a number of years. I've been trying to get him to do this for a while. So I hope that everyone can join and please feel free to invite a friend as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right, until then,
the link tonight wasn't really working for some people.
Okay, how did I don't know? Let me look at. It was sent through the communications chat.
Yeah.
Send a link though.
The Zoom link, it wasn't fully hyperlinked, so I guess that's why.
All right, yeah, I think it's because Vicky was busy, so she didn't. I don't think she really looked at it. Because even that message, you sent a message for it was for next week. But, let me even check if it's even the right. Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, she only hyperlinked part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mama. Say hi. Mama. Yes. All right then.
All right, no problem. I'm guessing, is it a case where the link is bad every week? Because Alicia was saying that might be the reason why.
I don't know. Just tonight, when Dad was trying, he couldn't get on. I got on through the youth group. Mama, I want to. No. Answer it properly.
Okay, I think if you best way to go through it is if you go through the catalog, and then you click, it will just send you.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know why she sent the wrong thing. I'll probably just let her know. But I think it's just because they're busy setting things up for that.
Yeah, but it wasn't the wrong one. It's just that it wasn't fully accurate.
Yeah, but she shouldn't have sent the number because obviously it's a bit long-winded to get in that way. It's easy just to get in with a link.
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but there was still a good turnout this evening anyway. And one person that was on before, she's just wondering how she got on.
Yeah. All right then. Later. Thanks for the study.
All right, no problem. All right, bye.
I understand that some people couldn't log on. Yes,